せいかもしれないけど、なんか元気のない人が多い気がして。
Nah, I think this is just the average amount of enthusiasm for anyone who goes to SeaWorld. We open with Manatsu admiring a poster for a new dolphin exhibit at the aquarium where guests could interact directly with the sea mammals. And thanks to the power of nepotism, Mrs. Natsumi scored the Tropical Club some tickets. I don't know, Manatsu. Or did you not see that one Treehouse of Horrors?
Oh no, you poor thing. Here. Ow! Son of a...
Anyone else missed the days when those specials were actually good? But yeah, Manatsu is excited and even told Laura how great it would be to get close to the residents of the sea. And yeah, I just love the look on Laura's face here that screams, "Girl, you need to work on your pickup lines." Meanwhile, at the exhibit, the MC was getting in some late night practice with the dolphins.
Gambarona!
Oh, please don't tell me that's what the dolphins are going to sound like throughout the episode. Well, I didn't need these ears anyway. The next day, our heroines exhibited varying degrees of interest in the dolphins. Obviously, Laura didn't care since she was probably neighbors with a few. Meanwhile, Minori was more interested in... Let me guess, you want to meet with a cross-dressing dude and his amazing fashion sense. Seriously, it's a pity the show never got a sequel. However, as they entered the aquarium, Manatsu noticed an ominous fog that also resembled an occurrence from the previous night. Uh-oh, I think Silent Hill is starting to roll in. Inside the aquarium, our heroines began to wonder what dolphins felt like. Oh, y'all just had to say the trigger word, didn't you? However, they would have to hold off on touching the purple vegetable-like creatures, as the wait time for the exhibit was at least 2 hours, much to Manatsu's disappointment. Thus, they decided to kill time at some of the other exhibits, starting with what Minori wanted to see. And I will admit, it's nice to see more of this bookworm's odd fascinations, even if she does get a little too interested. Minori, is there something you want to share with the class? Otherwise, I'll just assume you're working with Walter White. But yeah, this scene in general was pretty cute and hilarious, especially Laura getting to know her distant relatives, the manatees, that were introduced in the first episode, in a nice callback. They also took a look at some of the big guys. Would you all stop triggering everyone? Look, dude, the whales won't get you, I swear. Calm down now. Eventually, they decide to give the dolphin exhibit another shot, with similar results. With the day coming to an end, it looked like they would have to call it quits, much to Manatsu's depression. Oh wow. Okay, I didn't want to bother pointing out that this is an Aoyama animated episode because really, who cares at this point? But I will give him this, the meme faces in his episodes tend to be a lot memeier. However, she ended up holding back her tears when she noticed a lot of the other guests were even more down than her. And after briefly turning into Andre from prison school, Manatsu realized this might have been the work of a Yaneda. Laura pulled out the aquapod and did pick up some very faint traces of Yaneda, and I guess that's why it didn't alert her as it usually does. What should have alerted her was Manatsu, who never did bring up the Silent Hill fog she saw until this point, and she was rightfully chewed out for it. Still, this did give Minori another opportunity to shine and point out how the Yaneda was likely somewhere the public couldn't reach inside the aquarium. Of course, Nemo decided to turn evil after Dory took over his last movie. The mermaid volunteered to go into the tanks, but of course that wouldn't be easy with so many people around. Thus, they decided to participate in a convenient little night tour of the aquarium that was highly limited to a few reserved guests, but again, power nepotism. Furthermore, they also happened to get a rather incompetent guide who just let 5 adolescent girls sneak off into their restricted areas that also didn't have any security. Anyway, Laura snuck into the tanks along with... I'm still not sure if I'm totally sold on Gen 8 just yet. Also, yes, it has been a while since we've seen this little mascot, who would just disappear again by the end of the scene after they discovered that the culprit was Numeri. Honestly, the whale was the best part of this whole thing.
Oh, hell no!
Laura gave chase in a bit of a disjointed scene with them just jumping in and out of the pools before getting held up by the manatee.
悪いけど急いでいるからちょっとそこを通してくれる？
Let go or I'll cut off your reproductive organs.
Meanwhile, Manatsu was becoming a little too infatuated with the dolphins. She was certainly more excited than everyone else, though that might have had more to do with the fact that Numeri had hidden a Yaneda amongst the pool toys. Apparently, it could drain its victims without taking on its full monster form, which, as we saw, also made it difficult for the Precure to detect unless they really looked into it. It's actually a pretty brilliant tactic that I only wish they had implemented a little sooner before we got stuck in the monotony of this current arc. They transform and engage the monster, though again, Aoyama episode, don't expect much. I mean, there were some decent sequences, like this ball and hoop actually bouncing off the walls with some good speed and impact, but then there were also some awkward moments like Minori and Sango launching off each other with just their feet while they were on the ground.
It's good for the kids if it's good for the adults!
At one point, Minatsu defended her beloved dolphins, who would end up helping them. They would certainly need it, as not only was her finisher nerfed to all hell, but the monster could also force the Precure to just harmlessly go through its hoop. Thus, the dolphins helped by... excuse me, but, what? Okay, so, let me get this straight. The dolphins managed to jump all the way up to the Yaneda, who has to be at least a few dozen feet in the air, while also carrying the Precure on their backs.
It just don't add up!
I mean, I kind of get it, the Yaneda's hoop likely drew them up to it, but I would doubt it would even need to use it unless they reached its eye level. And while dolphins can jump as high as 30 feet above the water, I highly doubt they'd be able to do that when they have the weight of as many as 2 Precure on top of them. Now, I do think the scene might have worked if they just did one simple thing. Don't have the Precure be on the dolphins. Think about it, they could have it so that the Cures are riding them at first, but then they jump off at the last minute while the monster is still looking at just the dolphins. From there, the scene could play mostly the same with the Yaneda distracted by the dolphins, while the Cures delivered these immeasurably awesome looking rider kicks. As is, we instead get this really silly bit of the dolphins pretty much flying, which I have a hard time believing unless they're somehow related to Bubbles. Anyway, our heroines did their usual routine with Laura delivering the finishing blow because again, everyone else's attacks have been heavily nerfed. And with that, the episode ended with Manatsu finally getting her wish to hug a dolphin in a not at all creepy manner. I'll give this episode this, it did have some interesting ideas and was decently informative about marine life. Really, in hindsight, this show probably needed more episodes at the aquarium, or at least some place where our heroines could interact more with sea life. And Mary's plan was actually pretty clever, and I do hope the villains use more of these covert tactics to change things up a little. But that also does highlight a big issue with this current arc. It has become a monotonous string of just mediocre filler episodes, with this one in particular having some subpar storyboarding. A somewhat saving grace of this episode was definitely the writing, handled by probably my favorite secondary writer of the show, Mio Inoue. She does character writing really well in spite of the show's main story not really going anywhere. Almost everyone got their time to at least show off their personalities like Manatsu and Minori and their slightly unhealthy obsessions with certain sea critters. It's also interesting to see the villains use something besides their usual hit and run tactics. Numeri's plan probably would have worked if she had just chosen some place the Precure wouldn't go to. That said, it doesn't save this episode from Aoyama's frugal and even kind of lazy animation direction, with characters either all having the same face or Andre faces. This wasn't helped by some poor storyboarding producing scenes that didn't flow all that well into others, like of course the flying dolphins. by the looks of it, next week is when we'll finally start to build towards the next big power-up item while also being a Minori episode. Both things could not have come any sooner, because overall, while this wasn't a really bad episode per se, it, much like the previous few outings, just kind of felt pointless. If you haven't seen it yet, I posted the first half of my Toy Trinity video on Friday. Yeah, I realized that it was starting to get a little wordy, plus editing the whole thing was becoming a bit of a nightmare. So I think splitting it in two was the best compromise. Part 1 is basically the main analysis for what I think makes her a great lead in the 3 franchises, and part 2 is going to be my picks for the best leads of each. As a result, I'd imagine that part will likely be what a lot of people want to see anyway, but still, do check out part 1 as I did try to do my best analysis of the 3 very different franchises. Look forward to part 2, as well as all my other videos, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and hi guys, yeah, I guess you didn't like me bad-mouthing your brethren like I did you? Okay, I get the idea. I'm going.